My name is Olivia Mitchell, and at 32 years old, I had become fluent in the language of quiet duty. I spoke it in the meticulous lines of code I wrote for environmental data models, in the patient observation of forest regrowth patterns, and most of all, in the unspoken currency of support I provided my family. My world was one of careful observation and logical conclusions, a landscape of cause and effect that felt safe and predictable. My family, however, operated in a different ecosystem entirely, one governed by emotion, image, and the unwavering orbit of my younger sister, Emma. For as long as I could remember, Emma was the sun. We all, in our own ways, were just planets caught in her gravitational pull. She was vibrant, effervescent, and blessed with a social grace that made people want to be near her. While I was tucked away in libraries or trekking through muddy research sites, she was collecting accolades of a different sort: prom queen, sorority president, and now, a burgeoning social media influencer with a knack for making a sponsored post look like a spontaneous moment of joy. My parents, bless them, were her most devoted fans. They saw her sparkle as a reflection of their own success, her popularity a validation of their parenting. My achievements, a master's degree in environmental science, a prestigious fellowship, a stable career protecting the natural world I loved, were acknowledged with a sort of polite but distant pride, like a framed certificate hung in a rarely used hallway. They were commendable, but they didn't glitter. I had long ago made peace with this dynamic, or so I told myself. I found my validation in the tangible results of my work: a restored watershed, a protected species, a piece of legislation informed by my research. Family, I reasoned, didn't need to understand the nuances of my life's work. They just needed to be family. And for me, being family had evolved into a role of quiet stewardship. I was the reliable one, the emergency contact, the financial backstop. It was a role I accepted without complaint, because love, I believed, was often expressed in service. This belief was what led me to plan the mountain lodge trip. For years, I'd held onto a gauzy, idealized image of a perfect family vacation. Not the rushed, chaotic holidays of our childhood, but a real retreat. A week of shared meals, fireside chats, and long walks under a canopy of pine trees. I pictured showing them the headwaters of a river I'd helped protect, explaining the delicate dance of the ecosystem. I imagined, for once, that my world and theirs might beautifully intersect. So I saved. For 2 years, I set aside a portion of my salary, money that could have been a down payment on the small house I dreamed of, and poured it into a vacation fund. I found the perfect place, a sprawling, timber-framed lodge nestled in the heart of the Cascade Mountains, with a great room warmed by a river rock fireplace and panoramic windows that looked out onto a serene alpine lake. It was expensive, an indulgence, but I justified the $8,000 deposit as an investment in a memory I desperately wanted to create. I booked it under my name, paid with my credit card, and proudly presented it to my family as my treat. Their initial reaction was ecstatic. A flurry of excited texts filled the family group chat. Emma immediately began planning outfits. My mother started researching gourmet recipes for the lodge's state-of-the-art kitchen. It felt, for a fleeting moment, like my dream was taking root. The call that unrooted it came on a Tuesday evening. I was at my desk in my small home office, a cozy room lined with books on ecology and cartography, the city lights of Portland twinkling outside my window. My mother's voice on the phone was laced with a familiar, careful hesitation. "Honey, about the mountain lodge trip next month." I leaned back in my chair, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. I knew that tone. It was the preamble to a request, a change of plans, an Emma-centric adjustment. "What's up, Mom?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "Well, sweetie, Emma and I were talking," she began, and I could already picture the scene: Emma, painting a picture of her ideal vacation, and my mother, nodding along, eager to please her glittering daughter. "She's so excited to bring her new boyfriend, Jake. He's just wonderful, Olivia. A real go-getter. And Emma feels, well, she wants it to be a bit more intimate." The word hung in the air, cold and sharp. "Intimate," I repeated, my voice hollow. I looked at the confirmation email still open on my screen, the bolded total $8,000, staring back at me. "Mom, I'm paying for the lodge. The whole thing." "Oh, I know, sweetie, and we're also so grateful, you have no idea," she said, her voice rushing to smooth over the awkwardness. "But Emma is just worried. You know how you get so into your science stuff. She thinks having her boring older sister there might make things a little awkward for Jake. She wants everyone to be relaxed and just have fun." You understand, right? Boring older sister. The phrase landed like a punch. All my life, my passion had been framed as a social deficiency. My quiet intensity was seen as dull, my love for knowledge a strange quirk. I had thought, naively, that as adults, this would change. That my contributions would finally be seen as valuable, not just financially, but intrinsically. Besides, Mom added, her voice brightening as she pivoted to a practical solution, her relief palpable. Someone needs to watch the cats. You know how expensive pet sitters are these days, and Rocky needs his medicine twice a day. It would be such a huge help. There it was. My role, distilled to its essence. Benefactor and pet sitter. Good enough to fund the fantasy, but not to be a part of it. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Mom told you, right? Don't take it personally, but Jake and I are trying to make a good impression on everyone. Your whole science nerd vibe doesn't really fit the aesthetic we're going for. Thanks for understanding. XO. Jake. Her boyfriend of 3 months, whom I had never met. His comfort, his impression, his aesthetic, was prioritized over my presence. Another buzz. My dad. Princess, you're always so responsible. We know we can count on you to hold down the fort. Emma needs this time to shine. Emma always needed to shine. And I, it seemed, was the shadow that made her light appear brighter. I scrolled through my banking app, a morbid curiosity guiding my thumb. The lodge deposit. The $20,000 I'd transferred to Emma in installments for her private university tuition, a sum she dismissed as a family contribution. The emergency $15,000 loan to my father when his contracting business hit a rough patch during the pandemic, a loan he'd assured me he'd repay once he was back on his feet, yet never mentioned again. The smaller amounts peppered throughout, a few thousand for my cousin Sarah's destination wedding, $1,000 for my mom's dental surgery. A silent ledger of my devotion. My phone lit up again. It was the family group chat. Emma had posted a link to the lodge's website. Can't wait for this. Jake is going to love it. Mom and Dad get the master suite with the fireplace, obviously. Sarah and Tom get the Lakeview room, and Jake and I call dibs on the Sunset Suite. It's going to be the most amazing week. Sarah, my cousin, and her husband Tom were invited. Of course. Sarah, whose thank you note for the wedding money had been a tagged photo on Instagram. I stared at my reflection in the dark screen of my laptop. I saw a woman who had built a life of substance and meaning, yet was being treated like a ghost at her own feast. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could have unleashed a torrent of righteous anger. I could have listed every sacrifice, every check written, every dream deferred. Instead, a profound and weary calm settled over me. I typed back a simple, 7-word sentence. No problem. Have a wonderful time. Emma's reply was instantaneous. You're the best, sis. Don't forget to water Mom's plants too while we're gone. The ferns are drama queens. I closed the laptop, the soft click echoing in the quiet room. For 10 years, I had been watering their plants, feeding their cats, and funding their lives, all while hoping they would one day turn around and see me standing there. Really see me. But they weren't looking. They were looking at each other, at their phones, at the glittering reflection of the life I was underwriting. The mountain trip was supposed to be different. It was my attempt to build a bridge between my world and theirs. But they had decided, without a moment's hesitation, to stand on their side and wave goodbye. I stood up and walked to the window, gazing out at the city that had become my home. Below, the streets were a river of light, a complex network of purpose and direction. For the first time, I felt a flicker of something other than hurt. It was a cool, clear resolve. They wanted an intimate family gathering. Fine. But intimacy was a two-way street. And they had no idea how intimate things were about to get. I walked back to my desk and opened the bottom drawer, pulling out a file folder. It wasn't filled with property documents, but with something far more relevant, a thick stack of printed receipts, bank statements, and a meticulously kept spreadsheet I'd named Family Support Ledger. It was a record I never intended to use, a private accounting of my love. But looking at it now, I realized it wasn't a ledger of love. It was a history of my own erasure. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to write a new chapter. The week leading up to their departure was a masterclass in cognitive dissonance. The family group chat buzzed with an almost manic excitement, a digital symphony of obliviousness. Emma posted daily countdowns, complete with polls asking which hiking outfit made her look more effortlessly outdoorsy. Sarah shared a screenshot of the spa package she'd booked at a resort near the lodge, adding a winking emoji and the caption, "Treating myself, thanks to the best cousin ever." My mother sent photos of the artisanal cheeses and expensive wines she was packing, asking for my opinion on pairings as if I were a consultant for a party I wasn't attending. Through it all, I remained a pleasant, ghost-like presence in the chat, responding with thumbs-up emojis and brief, encouraging words. Each cheerful message I typed felt like a small act of rebellion, a quiet refusal to give them the drama they might expect. My silence was my laboratory now, and I was observing the experiment unfold. I watered my mother's dramatic ferns, took detailed notes on Rocky the cat's medication schedule, and assured my dad I had the number for a good plumber in case the old pipes in their house acted up. I was the perfect, responsible daughter, the reliable foundation upon which their perfect vacation was being built. Meanwhile, in the quiet hours of the evening after work, I was laying a new foundation. My first call was to the mountain lodge. I spoke with a manager named David, his voice calm and professional. "Good evening, Cascade Alpine Lodge," David speaking. "Hello, David," I began, my heart thrumming a nervous rhythm against my ribs. "My name is Olivia Mitchell. I have a reservation for the Grand Pine Lodge next week, confirmation number 74B39. I heard the clacking of a keyboard. Yes, Ms. Mitchell. I have it right here. The 7-night booking for the main lodge. We're very much looking forward to hosting your family." "Thank you," I said, taking a steadying breath. "I actually need to make a significant modification to the booking." "Of course," he said. "What did you have in mind?" "I saw on your website that you also have a number of private, individual cabins." "The cedar cabins, I believe." "That's right. They're lovely. More rustic than the main lodge, but very private. Each has its own kitchenette and a small deck. Are 5 of them available for that same week?" I asked, holding my breath. Another pause, more clacking. "You're in luck. We've just had a corporate retreat reschedule. Yes, 5 are available. They are, I should mention, priced slightly higher per night than the prorated cost of the main lodge due to the privacy and individual amenities." "That's perfectly fine," I said, a strange sense of calm descending over me. This wasn't about punishment. It was about principle. I'd like to cancel the booking for the Grand Pine Lodge and instead book those 5 cedar cabins under my name. David was silent for a moment. "Certainly, Ms. Mitchell, we can do that. May I ask, will the guest list be the same?" "The names on the guest list will be the same, yes," I confirmed. "My parents, Robert and Linda Mitchell. My sister, Emma Mitchell, and her guest, Jake Miller. And my cousin, Sarah Peterson, and her husband, Tom." "Very good," he said. "So, just to confirm, you are canceling the single reservation for the main lodge and creating 5 new, separate reservations for 5 individual cabins. The booking will remain in your name, and the balance will be charged to your card on file." "That's exactly right," I said. "I will process that for you now and send a modified confirmation to your email," David said, his tone impeccably professional, though I sensed a flicker of curiosity. "And Ms. Mitchell, as the sole booking holder and payer, please know that any further modifications or inquiries regarding these 5 reservations must come directly from you." "I understand completely, David," I said. "Thank you for your help." After I hung up, I sat in the stillness of my office, the new confirmation email glowing on my screen. I felt a pang of something that wasn't triumph, but a deep, resonant sadness. This wasn't a game. It was a line being drawn in the sand, a boundary being erected where for so long there had only been an open door. The day of their departure, I performed my duties with placid efficiency. I drove to my parents' house, retrieved the cats and the wilting ferns, and listened to my mother's breathless, last-minute instructions. "Make sure Rocky gets his pill crushed in the wet food. He won't take it otherwise," she said, bustling around her kitchen. "And Emma is so thrilled. Jake has never been to the Cascades. This is their first real trip together. It has to be perfect." She paused and gave me a quick, distracted hug. "Thank you for being so understanding about this, honey. You're a saint." I smiled a thin, non-committal smile. "Have a safe drive. I'm sure it will be a trip you'll never forget." I knew from their texts that they'd stopped for a long, leisurely lunch on the way. They would be arriving at the lodge around 4:30, the golden hour, just as the sun began its descent behind the jagged peaks. At 4 o'clock, I muted the family group chat. I put on a record, the quiet, contemplative folk music of Nick Drake, and sat in my favorite armchair with a book on lichenology, Rocky purring on my lap. I was creating my own sanctuary. At 4:45 p.m., my phone, though muted, began to light up like a pinball machine. A barrage of texts. A string of missed calls. I let it flash, watching the screen illuminate with the names of my entire family, one after another. Finally, after the 10th call, I unmuted my phone and answered. It was my mother. Olivia, thank God. Her voice was tight with panic. There's been a terrible mistake at the lodge. They're saying our reservation for the main building was canceled. They're trying to put us in these little cabins in the woods. Emma is beside herself. She's crying. Her perfect trip is ruined before it's even begun. I kept my voice even, infusing it with a tone of gentle concern. Oh, that's so strange, Mom. A mix-up? What did the manager say? He was very rude. He just kept saying the reservation was modified by the booking holder and that they can't make any changes without your authorization. He won't even look at us. We tried explaining that we're your family, but he was like a robot. Can you please call them right now and fix this? Tell them who we are. I stroked Rocky's soft fur, the cat's rumbling per a steady anchor in the storm. I thought of all the times my accomplishments were dismissed, my passions ignored, my presence deemed inconvenient. Actually, Mom, I said, my voice as calm as a still mountain lake. There's no mistake. The reservation is exactly as I modified it last week. A beat of stunned silence. Then what? What do you mean you modified it? Why on earth would you do that? Well, I began, choosing my words with the precision of a scientist classifying a new species. Since this was to be such an intimate family gathering, I thought everyone might appreciate some extra privacy. Some dedicated space for intimacy, you could say. Each couple has their own cabin. Emma and Jake can enjoy their aesthetic without my boring presence cramping their style. Sarah and Tom can go to the spa without being tied to a group schedule. And you and Dad have a cozy little retreat all to yourselves. No need to host big family dinners in the gourmet kitchen. It sounds much more relaxing this way, don't you think? But that's not what we planned, she sputtered. Emma wanted everyone together. In the beautiful lodge. She wanted to impress Jake. No, Mom, I corrected gently. Emma wanted everyone she approved of together. There's a distinct difference. I simply took her desire for a curated guest list to its logical conclusion. My phone buzzed with an incoming text from Emma in the group chat. I read it aloud to my mother in a serene, measured tone. You have officially ruined everything. This is a nightmare. Jake is so uncomfortable. This isn't the luxury vacation I promised him. Huh. I switched to the group chat and typed a reply for all to see. The individual cedar cabins are actually a bit more expensive than the main lodge booking. Please consider it my treat. A little upgrade to enhance your private, intimate experience. After all, family helps family, right? Sarah, never one to be left out of a conflict, chimed in immediately. This is so petty, Olivia. We would have invited you if you weren't so. You. I smiled faintly. I opened the photo gallery on my phone, found the screenshot I had prepared of the $3,000 transfer for her wedding, labeled Sarah wedding gift/loan, and posted it in the chat. Funny, I typed. I wasn't too me when you needed money for your destination wedding. By the way, how is married life treating you? The group chat went dead silent. My mother was still on the line, breathing heavily. Olivia, please, she whispered, her anger deflating into a plea. We never meant to hurt you. We just... Emma thought. Emma wanted. Emma needed. The lifelong refrain. I know, Mom. That's the way it's always been, I said, my voice soft but unyielding. Well, now Emma has her very own private cabin with Jake. You all have exactly what you asked for, an exclusive, intimate family vacation. I truly hope you enjoy every minute of your privacy. Make sure to post lots of pictures. I ended the call and finally turned my phone to silent, placing it face down on the table. The flashing notifications ceased. The house was quiet again, filled only with the sound of purring cats and the gentle melody from the record player. I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights, a vast and indifferent constellation. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't screamed or cried. I had simply held up a mirror. And for the first time, my family was being forced to look at their own reflection. They wanted intimacy. They were about to spend 7 long days swimming in it. The first 3 days of their intimate getaway unfolded through a series of increasingly desperate communications, like dispatches from a failed expedition. After my initial salvo, I had re-engaged with the group chat, not as a combatant, but as a serene, almost clinical observer. My calm, factual responses seemed to infuriate them more than any outburst would have. Emma, predictably, led the charge. She sent grainy photos of her and Jake looking cramped and miserable in their cabin, which, while smaller than a suite in the main lodge, was by any objective measure a perfectly charming and well-appointed space. There's barely room for my suitcase, she lamented. And the kitchenette is a joke. How am I supposed to impress Jake with my cooking on a 2-burner hot plate? I replied with a link to a blog post titled, Gourmet Meals for Two in a Tiny Kitchen. My reply was met with a string of angry face emojis. Sarah, meanwhile, complained about the logistics. We have to walk almost a quarter-mile to the main building for our spa appointments. And the path isn't even paved. My new suede boots are ruined. I sent her a link to a well-reviewed all-weather hiking shoe. My mother attempted a campaign of emotional warfare. She sent photos of the small dining table in her and my father's cabin, with 2 empty chairs conspicuously pulled up to it. Look how much room there is, she texted. It feels so empty without you and your sister. It's not too late to drive up, honey. We miss you. I was sitting in my small, meticulously tended backyard garden, enjoying the cool evening air with a glass of crisp Sauvignon Blanc, when my father called. I let it ring twice before answering. Princess, he began, his voice smooth and practiced, the one he used for negotiating contracts. I think we've all gotten off on the wrong foot here. This isn't what any of us wanted. Really? I said, taking a sip of wine. It seems to me everyone is getting exactly what they asked for. Emma wanted an exclusive trip with her new boyfriend. You and Mom wanted to support her. I was just the facilitator. Now, Olivia, that's not fair, he chided gently. Your sister feels just terrible. She's a sensitive girl. She didn't mean to exclude you, she wanted everything to be perfect for Jake. Perfect for a stranger she's known for 3 months was more important than including her sister, I stated, not as a question, but as a fact. The silence on his end was my answer. You know, Dad, I was organizing some old financial files last week. It's amazing the things you forget about. I heard his sharp intake of breath. Olivia, that's ancient history. Let's not dredge up the past. Is it? That $15,000 loan I gave you to keep the business afloat during the pandemic, I continued, my voice level. I never told you this, but that money wasn't just from my savings. It was the seed money for a down payment on a house. I put my own dream on hold to save yours. And you never even told Mom where the money came from, did you? She still thinks the bank came through with a miracle loan at the last minute. The silence was longer this time, thick with unspoken truths. Princess, he started again, his voice strained. Don't princess me, Dad, I said, the words finally coming out, not with anger, but with a weary clarity. That name doesn't work anymore. A princess gets invited to the ball. I'm just the woman who pays for the carriage and then gets told to go home and feed the mice. I'm done. I'm done being the family ATM who isn't good enough to be in the family photos. I hung up the phone, my hand trembling slightly. It was the first time in my 32 years I had ever directly confronted him. It was terrifying and, to my surprise, deeply liberating. Later that evening, the saga took an unexpected turn. A private message appeared in my inbox. It was from Jake. My heart hammered against my ribs. I expected a tirade, a defense of Emma, a demand for an apology. Instead, I read the following. Hey Olivia. This is Jake. I know this is random, but I felt I had to reach out. I wanted to apologize. I had no idea about the full situation here, that you paid for this entire trip. Emma told me her parents were treating everyone. To be honest, this whole experience has been illuminating. The separate cabins, weirdly, gave me a lot of space to think. I've seen a side of Emma and her dynamic with your family that makes me deeply uncomfortable. I don't think I'm the right person for her or for this. I'm actually packing my things and heading home in the morning. I just wanted to thank you, in a strange way, for inadvertently helping me dodge a bullet. I stared at the message, a slow smile spreading across my face. It wasn't born of malice towards Emma, but of a profound sense of validation. An objective, third-party observer had seen exactly what I had seen. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't too sensitive. The dynamic was real, and it was toxic. As predicted, the next morning, the group chat exploded. Emma sent a long, rambling series of messages, oscillating between heartbroken anguish and incandescent rage. Jake had left. He'd abandoned her in the middle of her perfect vacation. And it was, of course, all my fault. If we had been in the main lodge, if I hadn't created all this drama, he never would have left. My mother chimed in, ever the peacekeeper. Maybe if we had all been together, as a family, this wouldn't have happened. He wouldn't have felt so isolated. I took a deep breath and typed my final reply in the chat. Or maybe if you had raised your daughter to be less entitled and more appreciative of the people in her life, she wouldn't drive them away. This has nothing to do with cabins or lodges. This has to do with character. The chat fell silent once more. The truth, it seemed, was a conversation stopper. On the last day of their trip, my dad sent one final, long text message. It was a rambling, disjointed apology, full of phrases like, family needs to stick together, and we know we've taken you for granted, and we want to make things right. I read it, and for the first time, felt a flicker of pity for him. He was trying, in his own clumsy, inadequate way, to glue the pieces back together. But he didn't realize the pieces themselves had changed shape. I replied not with words, but with an image, a photo of the brochure for my own upcoming solo trip. A quiet cabin, not unlike theirs, but this one was chosen by me for me. I'll be in the mountains next week, I wrote. I've booked a lovely cabin with a view of the sunrise. I'll be hiking, identifying native plant species, and assisting with a local forest conservation project. I will not have cell service in most areas, and I won't be available for emergency fund requests or pet sitting duties. For the first time in a very long time, I am putting myself first. I suggest you all try doing the same. This time, there was no reply. The day they were scheduled to return, a heavy silence hung over my phone. There were no triumphant "we're home" texts, no photos of their mountain souvenirs. Around 6 in the evening, my doorbell rang. It was my mother, standing on my welcome mat, looking smaller and older than I had ever seen her. In her hands was the cat carrier. "The cat's missed you," she said, her voice thin and weak. She couldn't meet my eyes. I took the carrier from her, the familiar weight a strange comfort. I set it down and opened the latch. Rocky and Mittens trotted out, winding around my ankles as if they'd never left. "I'm sure they did," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "Just like you all miss my wallet when it's not open for business." She flinched, a small, sharp movement. For a moment, I thought she might argue, might defend herself. Instead, she just nodded, her shoulders slumping. "We deserve that," she whispered. "We deserve all of it." She finally lifted her gaze to mine, and her eyes were filled with a deep, bottomless exhaustion. The drive home was silent. No one spoke a word. "Emma went straight to her room and hasn't come out. Sarah's husband cornered your father in the driveway, demanding to know when they could expect repayment for that loan you mentioned. And your father, he finally told me, Olivia, about the business, about your house fund. He told me everything." She looked around my small, tidy living room, at the stacks of books and the maps on the wall. "I never knew," she said, her voice breaking. "I was so busy celebrating Emma's latest tweet that I never once asked you about your own life. I never asked you about your dreams." Tears streamed down her face now, silent and unheeded. "You know what hurts the most, Mom?" I said, my own voice thick with years of unspoken emotion. "It wasn't the money. It wasn't even being uninvited. It was the invisibility. It was the fact that none of you ever saw me. My work, my passions, my achievements, none of it was real to you. My entire worth was tied to what I could provide. You loved my function, not my person. How do we fix this?" she asked, her voice a raw whisper. "Is it even possible?" "I don't know," I admitted honestly. "But I know it can't be fixed with grand gestures or expensive vacations. It has to start small. It has to start with respect. With genuine curiosity. It has to start with you treating me like a daughter you want to know, not a resource you need to manage." She nodded slowly, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Your father showed me the brochure for your trip. The Forest Conservation Project. It sounds fascinating. I went online and read about it. About you. There was an article that mentioned your work." Her eyes met mine, holding a flicker of something new, not pride, exactly, but a dawning awareness. "I'd like to learn more. When you get back, maybe you could tell me about what you do." It was a small step, a single stone laid on a long, broken path. But it was a start. The following week, I drove up into the mountains alone. My cabin was small, rustic, and perfect. It smelled of cedar and wood smoke. The first morning, I woke before dawn and sat on my small deck, a mug of hot coffee warming my hands, and watched the sun rise over the jagged peaks, painting the sky in strokes of rose and gold. I took a photo and posted it online, with no caption but the location. The response was a microcosm of my family state. Emma, I noticed, had unfollowed me. Sarah posted a snippy comment, "Must be nice to flaunt a solo vacation." I deleted it without a second thought. And then a notification from my mother. She had liked the photo. A few minutes later, a comment appeared. "Beautiful view, honey. I read that the alpine larch trees in that region are spectacular this time of year. Tell me if you see any. And tell me more about your work when you can." I smiled, a real, unburdened smile. I didn't reply right away. I took another sip of coffee and breathed in the crisp, clean mountain air. The path to reconciliation would be long and perhaps never fully complete. There were still apologies to be made, conversations to be had, trust to be rebuilt. But for the first time, it felt possible. I hadn't set out to win a war or exact revenge. I had simply demanded to be seen. In doing so, I had forced them to see themselves, and in the process, I had found a clearer view of my own horizon. I was no longer just a supporting character in their story. I was the protagonist of mine, standing on a mountaintop of my own making, ready to see what lay on the other side.